Ben was the oldest one, and he had and how he ended up with a clothing store in, where we're trying to think of, beyond what, Eagle Lake. He ended up with a clothing store in Eagle Lake, a pretty nice clothing store too. And so the only thing good about Eagle Lake was on Sundays, if you were really good, and they ended up being 5 children. I had 3 sisters and a brother. Is we would go over there and visit them, and I could go to the theater because the nearest theater was Wallace, but it was wooden seats and everything, and I never got to go to the theater in Wallace. But I could go. When we went to Eagle Lake, you'd go to the theater, and that was pretty big stuff. And we had some other kinfolks in El Campo. There was a lady who was the daughter of the uncle over in Eagle Lake, and she and her husband lived over there. And then my other place that I knew a lot about was my father and his brother somehow or another got in with the people who built New Gulf. And New Gulf was a town that was 100% owned by the Sulphur Company. They controlled everything. They built all the houses, all the stores and everything. And somehow or another they got appointed that they could have the food market. And one of the brothers' son ran that almost its entire existence until New Gulf. The sulfur played out, the town emptied out, and finally they tore it down. I understand. There's not much left in New Gulf.
I'm talking about in Orchard?
No, I'm talking about New Gulf, Texas, over by Bowling. This was much bigger deposit, and remember, it had a whole very nice store, all concrete streets, little white houses, but they owned everything. They owned all the
company store.
They had a company. Well, they had no, they didn't run it. They let all these be run by other people, but they owned everything. So it always had to go their way, you see. But it was profitable, and it was really a good deal for everybody. And as long as that sulfur mine or deposit lasted, it was very profitable. And one day it ran out. Big block, when you'd go over there, you'd smell the sulfur. And they had these gigantic blocks of sulfur. You let the liquid come out of the well because it's delivered as a liquid. You put hot water down, it melts the sulfur, and then you pump and you pressure, and it pumps it out, and you just pump it in big vats. And then that's the way they store it. And then they would have a machine, or I remember you could even dynamite it and break it up and load it on cars and ship it for fertilizer or whatever it's going to use for all of the United States. That was a tremendous deposit. And one of the cheapest ways of getting sulfur. The other place that there's a lot of sulfur, I've been told, is in volcanic sulfur, but the cost of mining, purifying it, is very high, and the Frosch method of pumping the hot water down to where you find the deposits in limestone is the way to go. So we had a lot of kinfolks around there. We even had some cousin or somebody who was in Needville. We'd occasionally go over to Needville, but I don't remember too much about it. And then of course my uncle was he was the most prominent one, and he was a physician, and he did very, very well in Houston. He was an ear, nose, and throat physician, and he married a lady who became the first lady to graduate from medical school in Galveston, and became an ophthalmologist. And in those days, the only place to train was Vienna. They were always telling me about you had to go to Europe to train to become a specialist. And they were very prominent early physicians in Houston. She was the first woman on the school board in Houston. And it's a school named after Ray K. Daly, one of the schools they named after a couple of years ago when I was there. But he was a very generous guy, and came to helping the family or bringing them over. And when most of our kinfolks were here, one brother never came, but he did go to Europe and talk the brother into letting two of his sons, I don't know if he had another or not, come here, and my father's sister, who was married in Richmond, took those and adopted them, and they did well here. But that was sort of the end of the people from Europe, because they all came starting in the early 1900s. When I guess if you just wanted to come and had the money, you could afford ship's fare, or you could come. My father came. My mother came. Her family came through Boston, I think, as when they came over here, and somehow or another she got down here and was kin to the wife of the brother, who was Nita Lake, and of course my father met her here, and 5 children. A long time later, here we are. But my father actually came through Galveston, and he's on the rolls that they kept, the people who were the immigrants who came in. So we know all about him and his coming here. My mother just said she came through Boston and somehow or another. But it's part of the early history, how I got here.
How did you transition from being a doctor to being a store owner?
Well, no, wait a minute now.
Okay.
You mean?
Were you, okay, let me back up. My assumption is that you had something to do with the Daly Brothers store.
No.
Different Daly.
That was my father Abe and his brother Joe that switched the house.
Okay. Now
and so my father always, I guess Joe was older, and so they decided this would be Daly Brothers store, and my father called everything they owned Daly Brothers, and when they passed away, he gave Joe Daly's heirs half of everything. But my father always said this was Daly Brothers, and that's the Daly Brothers that's on the side of the lumberyard that we had here. And so he was a very, very fair guy. I don't know if I would have done it, because he did everything here to increase the worth. He not only had the mercantile store, but he loved farmland, and he was always, this was Depression time, so when things would get bad, people would sell it was cheap, he always wanted to buy it. But my mother told him, you can't buy it unless you got the money. You can't have loans. Well, he did occasionally get some, but so that's the reason these little tracts of land that my brother and I and sisters inherited became, they're worth a lot of money now, but he bought all those. And he had farms. He farmed cotton. He farmed, he didn't, but he had people. We had a black man, Jimmy Allen, who was in charge of everything for years. He was really great. He was a very strong guy, and he had all these people that worked, and we had some cows. We always had 50, 100 head of cows. My father liked to get on that horse and ride around and everything. He'd bring his brother out, they'd ride horses, and we ended up with a fair tracts of land all over this place. And when he couldn't buy it, he would talk his brother or other kinfolks into buying some of the land, and they ended up with it too. Recently, my cousin, I don't think he'd ever seen a 150 acre tract that was remained on Guyler Road, and he said he's older than I am. He said he's still around. He said he had to have some money for his kid who was going through a lot of money, so he sold that remaining 150 acres. They probably paid $50, $75 an acre, and he sold it. Of course, a lot of time has passed. He sold it for $22,000 an acre. It's only money, I say. And it was just he liked the land. He liked farming. He didn't do any of it. He had people that did it. But I can remember that at our height we had 100 head of mule. 100 head of mule. We kept them all right here at this barn, and the people who worked the land would come in the morning and get them a wagon and hook up the wagon and put the tools in it and go out to where the farms were. And we, in general, we had half hands. Half hands, you supply everything and they get half of the crop for supplying essentially the labor, but they're not out of anything. And that's how most of the farming was when I grew up. And these people, we had them, and they raised primarily cotton. We had one time 3 gins in Simonton. It was down to 2 by the time I really remember, and it stayed 2 until when I left. It was still 2 gins, and went to college in 1942, and I sort of never came back. But also he liked these cows, and we always had 50 or 100 head of beef cattle. And the milk cows were next to our house. You know, the store it was just a little track in there. And we had, that's where we kept the milk cows. We always had a couple of milk cows there. And I would not drink Jersey milk. So they had to get me a Holstein cow. And when she went fresh, which is the way she had, we say when you had the calf, and it's a period of time when you can't use the milk, because it's for the calf and it's colostrum and it's different. I just went without milk. And I could say, well, maybe that by not drinking milk was so fatty, maybe that's the reason my arteries are better now. I don't know. That's me.
So this was your home?
Next door.
Next door?
This was the Burwells. The Burwells had ice, cold drinks, and the meat market next to our general store, post office, and the Burwells place. And they lived here, and I guess I could say it, he was a confirmed alcoholic and died as a young man. He just turned orange. He poisoned, he was a real drinker. But he had some boys who were great guys, and none of them drank. So we could walk from our house, to the store. You didn't have to ride or anything like that.
So in terms of the floods, and it's the big subject,
Yeah.
the 1913 flood, obviously you weren't around for the
No,
1913 flood.
yeah.
So what's the first flood that you remember, or can you tell me about flooding?
Well, I remember, I remember all the floods we had when I got older, and the closest I ever remember the water getting to town, there's a railroad bridge in those days it's just west of town, and the water got there, and Simonton never flooded. Our house was never flooded, and and the town itself did not flood. That's the closest I remember.
But you didn't really consider Valley Lodge the town so much. You considered this the east.
Yeah, Valley Lodge didn't exist.
Right.
Valley Lodge didn't exist until
57.
yeah. See.
So prior to that, I understood that there had been a time where they had convicts that came out and cleared some of the lands and would work.
Well, that was even earlier than I remember. And one of the big convict buildings, it is raining, thank goodness we love it, was right here in, he has a tract of land right there, and where your barn was, there was a convict built building of rough hewed out trees and so forth, and we'd always talk about, well, that's the convict building, but there were no convicts here as long as I can remember, so it had to be when I was younger, or I wasn't aware of them being there. Yeah, they had, I don't know what they did. I don't know whether they worked somebody's farms or something.
As far as the crops, you mentioned cotton.
The primary the crop was always cotton here, money crop. Corn, maize. Now the Mullins and the Spencers came here, who are north of town here, came here to raise potatoes because they were potato farmers in Missouri. But it really never worked out because there's just something about the soil and the weather. And I remember them having potato fields and going out in the potato fields when they were harvesting and picking up a few potatoes. I mean, I just sort of remember that they did it. And sooner or later they decided it wasn't the crop for them, but they were still staying and they were raising the same crops the rest of us were raising. Cotton was always the money crop. With corn, we had some alfalfa hay at times. We baled alfalfa hay and sold it. And of course, we had the lumber yard here. And in those days, the earliest I remember was the lumber came in box cars or flat cars. And you know, we had a siding here, but was gone a long time ago. Even the track was still here, and the dinky went from Yoakum to Houston one way in the morning and came back in the afternoon. We had, but we always had freights coming by, and our house would shake a little bit when a freight train would come by here. We were used to it; nobody didn't bother us. And we would get lumber for the lumberyard. Early on, it came in boxcars before they started just trucking it in here. It all came from East Texas, you know.
As far as you mentioned the dinky, that's one of the cute stories everybody likes to hear about. What do you remember of the dinky?
Well, the dinky was a funny looking electric diesel train. I'm not sure that electric, it was certainly diesel, but it was a rounded front. It didn't look like an engine. You know, you've seen trains like that. And it was only a couple cars, and of course it carried the mail, and it carried packages for the post office, and you could ride it. It came by in the morning going to Houston and came back in the afternoon. How much more convenient. And it went to Yoakum. And the interesting thing, I don't think I've been to Yoakum more than one time in my life. I've been everywhere else, particularly as I grew up, because I was into antique cars, and the antique car clubs like to go to all these little cities around here. But the dinky was really something. It ran for all those years.
How much did it cost?
You got me. I just don't remember. But we would ride it. You know, the train station originally was right down near the bayou downtown Houston, and that's the train station we came into. But
Now you mentioned train stations. I understand there was a depot here.
oh yeah, oh absolutely, we had a depot here. Sure,
Yeah.
we had stuff that came. You remember those carts high with the big metal wheels, and they unload the freight and stuff that was carried. You know, it cost a little more, but that's where you can get something faster. Was to have come by that service, and I don't remember exactly what they call that service. Something Express was when you got a package by Express or something. Railway Express or something like that. So they carried freight. You could have your packages brought here by that, or the mail always came by that.
And you mentioned cotton gins. You said at one point we had 3.
We had 3, and then the third one, I really don't remember the third one. I remember the one that sat in the middle of town that the people stole later on without anybody knowing. All of a sudden, the true owners came out, and guess what? Their gin wasn't here anymore.
How did you steal a gin? That's a big building, isn't it?
Now wait a minute. It's tremendous. They wanted the guts of it because you can rehab those gins, particularly, and send them to places like Africa. They still do a good job. They're just not as sophisticated. They came to town. This is a story. I was already at college and everything. That they came to town as if somebody sent them here to dismantle the gin, and it took a couple weeks or so. And they dismantled the gin, and they got everything, and they hauled it away on trucks. And the legitimate owners, nobody knew the difference. They came to town one time, and the gin was gone.
And so from there, they just took the building down?
And then the building was later. The building was here for several years after that, and it finally was taken down. Didn't have any more use for it.
Now, you mentioned there was the Daly Brothers store.
Then we had
Berkman's store.
No, yeah, Berkman's came later, and Rabinowitz was the other store that I remember. Daly is right now, and you look across the other side of the gin was Rabinowitz Brothers, sort of our competitors, but probably some of our in-laws, outlaws, because we knew the Rabinowitzes very well. They were in Rosenberg, Richmond, all around it. They settled in there and had all kind of business. You see Rhodes over there now, Cecil Rabinowitz, all that. I remember he was one of the younger ones. Cecil Bennett Road and all that. But they had the store over there. Then I think that store closed, and Berkman was running the store. My father and a guy from Fulcher, Mitch Mays, who I just barely remember, but I remember he had a big gun and he did everything. He got everything he wanted. A lot of land, but his wife was the sweetest lady in the world, and she knew my mother, and they were such big friends. Well, I think Mitch Mays put my father to help him run that store over there, and then they got Berkman in there, and they let Berkman run it, and Berkman ran it for many, many years. We used to go over there all the time. And then he came to Simonton, and which was here for many years. But he originally was in Fulcher.
I understood that, did Berkman's store burn down? Is that why they rebuilt it?
Yeah, I think it's I've sort of forgotten the whole story, but he was here a long time.
Now, there are stories in Fulcher of a gunfight, Old West kind of stuff, of a brothel and the saloons. Did Simonton have anything like that?
No. We did not even have a saloon. And who in the hell was it? Was the main lawman? Mr. Burr was the lawman.
Didn't say.
I can remember on very rare occasions, remember now I was only here till I went to college, of them calling the law in for something, but some disturbance. One of the most interesting things about the Depression is I remember the trains coming along, and it's not very far, the freights, from Houston to Simonton, but by the time they got to Simonton, they would stop for water. Sometimes 100 people would get off of the train. It was so many people, it's unbelievable. And they were looking for water and something to eat. We never had a serious crime all those years. Now my father, he told us if they come to the house or anything, tell them to come to the store. And in the store, if they said that they came for, they'd get all the water they wanted, we had town water. Interesting, we had town water. And he would give them a little bag with crackers, cheese, and sausage. I can remember very well. All they had to do was come and ask. And most people, they were not criminals. They were just people going from that place somewhere further west that told they could, can you imagine having to go through West Texas and all those hot states to get to
So
California?
what you're talking about is people that would hop on the train,
Yeah.
right? You're not talking about passengers on.
No, I'm talking about these are people on the freight train.
Yeah.
Sometimes we thought that, and of course they would strip all our trees of the fruit. So what? I just remember them as a kid. How many of them would get off the train to get water or something? And of course we had orders to send them to the store because we have food for you down there. And if they got to eat, we never had a serious crime. Nobody got shot, nobody got killed, nobody got assaulted. There was sort of a rule. When that train leaves, you better be on the train because they'll call the law to get you. For them.
So everybody knew the rules.
Everybody pretty well and we had all these people that worked for us at our house because my mother worked in the store. So we had a sort of a housekeeper and a cook, and they had a house behind our house where one or two of them lived. I don't remember all the names, but if they would come, they would tell them, go down to the store, they could point over there and they'll give you something to eat. Give you a soda pop or something.
Y'all gave them those crackers and stuff.
Yeah, because the idea was people to get food and water, they don't bother you. Remember, I don't ever remember a serious crime occurring. But Mr. Burwell, he was sort of the lawman, came in the drunk, being the main lawman here. And we certainly didn't have much gunplay. We had no saloons. If you don't have a saloon, you don't have drunks.
Yeah.
I mean, in hindsight, I think it's pretty good. And the biggest enjoyment we got was little carnivals came to town. Boy, that was really something in the old days. There was nothing exciting. And they were out there, you know where we would walk through, going back to your barn? That's where they would set up out there in that pasture out there. That was the real deal when a carnival came to town here.
You know, Randy Woods can tell the tale about they used to bring a bear.
Yeah, yeah.
People would wrestle a bear.
Yeah, if you wrestle a bear.
Did you ever wrestle a bear?
No! But I don't remember. I just remember how much fun it was going to the carnival. That's all.
So, whose lumber company was it? Whose
My
lumber?
father's.
Your dad's.
My father, Daly Brothers, and his brother, and Joe, who was in Rosenberg.
Did you mill the lumber, or did you just produce?
Oh, no. This all came in by railroad. And it came in by, until early on it came by railroad. Then they were still running it when some of it came by truck. Because I remember we got all that lumber for the barn, and we built in 1939 that he has kept up. That's built in 39. And we used cypress posts for the outside, and we got that all sent over from Louisiana. And the lumber, I think, was beginning to come by truck from East Texas to deliver rather than rail car. You have to double handle everything. First of all, you got to put in the rail car. Rail car gets here and you have to unload it on a truck to take it over to your building. Where if it came in a truck, they drove right in there. So we wanted them to deliver by trucks as soon as trucks came into being. We had a pretty good business, but yeah.
So let me talk about the businesses that Simonton had. We had a lumber yard. We had 3 grocery stores at one point, right?
We got, I don't know if they overlapped. I don't know if Berkman came after Rabinowitz closed or not. There's a period when I'm not sure. We always had 2 though.
Well, we had a post office.
That post
And
office.
you said we had a meat market.
The meat market, ice house, and drinks were all together. That was Burwell.
No, when you say, what does that mean? Drinks were all
No,
together?
no, no.
Is that a
That,
saloon?
I mean, he sold soda pop.
Soda. Okay.
We didn't have refrigeration originally in the store.
Oh.
I can barely remember in the cow pasture between the other side of the house, they put a generator, a gasoline operated. What's the word I'm trying to think? Not dynamo. What is it?
Compressor?
No, generator.
There's a
It's a
generator.
kind of generator, and we strung the wires over to our house and to the store. Just a couple bulbs is all. No, there's a word for that I can't think of. And I remember when they put the post in and the power company put electricity in. That was a big day. That was a big day. You know, the big day in our house.
How old were you when they did that?
I've got to have been 8 or 9. I just remember the poles out there and the wires, and suddenly we had electricity. And not everybody had electricity either. And not everybody got electricity. You know, later on the government passed a law that helped them. You could put the power company, helped the power company, paid them off to run wires every place anybody wanted any power. But before then, you had to pay to get electricity to your house.
Which is kind of the way it is now.
Really?
Well, I think,
Yeah, but the government pays. You know, we had some laws passed so that farmers and all these people in the boonies, and the power company was paid to run the wires out all over the place.
That was called the Rural Electrification Act.
That's it. So rural electrification came along. So I remember when we got the power, and you know, of course, I just sort of remember the lights. And the biggest thing that happened in our family, though, was when we got beyond fans and we put in a central fan in our house. Attic fan. That was a big, big day. And of course, my parents stayed here long enough to finally go beyond window units, and in their last years they had central air. But when they put the attic fan in, I never forgot that. That was a big day.
Well, you mentioned your parents and how long they worked in the store, and
Yeah.
what did they consider success?
Well, I guess to get ahead slowly financially.
Yeah.
My father always had a car, and when I remember, we always had a pickup truck and a 1.5-ton flatbed. And of course, my father hauled cotton. He learned to, you know how they used to do by hand, check the cotton for the staple and everything. When they would have a bale of cotton and put the straps around it and everything, those bales usually about 500 pounds. They always cut a place and took out a wad of that cotton and made a sample out of it. Then the guy who owned the bale would take that sample around to somebody to buy it. And you had to learn to yeah, you had to staple it and look at the color and all that. So my father bought cotton, and our truck would hold 13 bales of cotton, 10 on the flat part of it, and then 3 on top. And we had 2 guys that worked for us, could load the 3 on top. If they didn't have some other way, they could figure out a way to get it on top. And he hauled it to Houston, where he sold it to an outfit, and that outfit sent it over to Galveston, where they have steam compressors, and they compressed the bales and made them smaller to load them on ships to go to India or wherever they were sending it. So that he also bought pecans in a good season and even a bad season. And I remember that usually we'd wait till we got to 7,000 pounds, because that was the load limit in those days. That's the load limit. And he would take those to San Antonio, where there was the biggest pecan facility in this part of the country for cracking pecans and getting the meat out and that. And they used local Spanish labor, which was very, very cheap in those days. So we hauled pecans, he hauled cotton. We butchered cattle. We had a little place back in the back, he's got here, where we had our own little butchering place, and one of these guys who worked for us was a butcher. During the war, meat was scarce, and you had to have coupons, wheat cattle, and we butchered our own. And we sent the meat to New Gulf. We didn't have refrigeration, so they would start butchering real early in the morning. They'd put these tarps in the truck. They would butcher anywhere 3 to 6 steers, put that meat in there, and drive wide open to New Gulf, where they had refrigeration. I can remember them doing that.
Your parents, when they passed,
Yeah.
did they have many assets that they passed on to you and your?
Well, the best thing that they passed on to us was the land, which we didn't realize at that time. But the land, my sister inherited. Well, we sat down one day. We talked my mother into giving us the land before she passed away, having to do with taxes. And then, so here when she passed away, then we had all these tracts of land, and we sat down and decided how we were going to divvy it up. And my sisters, even that sister, one sister early on, the one who's still alive, she had 72 acres on a Gala Road, going from the track that way, and she wanted to sell, and husband had a heart attack, passed away, left her with a good business in Dallas. That ought to go ahead if you invest it wisely, and not by what we got today, but it was a good sum of money.
So
that's where the tower.
How many total acres did they leave y'all?
Let's see. She got 70. Well, if she got 72, there's 5 times about 400 acres.
it's quite a lot.
Man, you can imagine. If my mother had left my father alone, I'd have really been rich.
Now, you went to medical school.
Yeah. I went to veterinary school first.
Okay.
My uncle was trying to influence all of us to go to medical school, the physician. And he and my father were very, very friendly. And he came out here so he could ride horses. And my father talked him into buying some land. And we had big picnics out here on the river. And boy, did the kinfolks like to come for the picnics. Boy, barbecue and the works. But he came a lot. And he was just, he wanted to help his brothers early on. He just liked it out in the country. We got pictures of him now on his horse. He was so proud. My father would have him riding horse out here and everything. So it was a big family deal for us too. And a lot of people, we had a nice place, and the pastures were pretty well groomed, I guess. And the city folks always like to go out there and have picnics, have fun, ride the horses. We always had the horses from the ride.
So his uncle was the one that got him.
Boy, I can't say I didn't have a lot of fun. And my friend George Raymond, who chewed tobacco younger than I knew anybody, we went to school over here, right over here in grammar school. He chewed tobacco when we went to grammar school. And if the teacher caught him, he swallowed it. He told me that kept him from having any parasites. And my big thing on a Saturday was to go over to his place, and then we'd go rabbit hunting down in the woods there, somewhere. Cook our rabbits on stickies, we called them. But he was really a character, I want to tell you.
You mentioned the school. So,
Then he went to medical school after veterinary school.
okay. So let's get back, I guess, to that. How hard was it to get into veterinary school and then get into medical school? How hard was it for your family to send you on that?
Well, my uncle was very helpful, and without him, I don't think I would have gone to either one of these schools. Because when I went to A&M, I wanted to be an agricultural engineer. I wanted to design farm equipment. And my uncle was really pushing for me to go to veterinary school, and he knew the dean at veterinary school. That helped a lot. So I had one semester of engineering, and suddenly I was a veterinary student. Well, when I got ready to graduate from veterinary school, there was a job you could go to the government and hoof and mouth disease at the Mexican border. And if you really were single and you really wanted to, have sort of a wild time, you went down there, and the government was hiring all the veterinarians. But my uncle prevailed upon my father and myself, and I had a lot of influence from my father and mother, that I really should go to medical school because he happened to know the dean of the medical school. So I got accepted to the medical school from veterinary school if I could go to summer school and earn 12 more hours of physics and chemistry. And the University of Houston sort of made some exceptions because nobody's supposed to be able to earn 12 hours with labs, and let me go night and day. And I got my 12 hours in and started medical school. And I went to medical school the first year. Baylor had some fight or something. They were in Dallas, Baylor Medical School. And I don't know what the problem was, but Houston enticed them into moving here. But there were no buildings, and this was the war years. And so they started school in the Sears and Roebuck warehouse on Wall Drive. So the first year I went to school there. By the second year, the land had been given for a medical center, and Baylor was built. It was the first building built over there, and so that's where I went to school the second year. I went to Sears and Roebuck the first year, and out at medical center second year, and that was considered far out too. That's where the medical center and the medical. Herman Hospital was out there, and that's about it. Anderson was not even out there yet. And they said that when the medical center built out to Holcomb Boulevard, do you know where that is?
Yes.
That's all they could do. Well, they're only 2 miles past that now. And Anderson has got buildings everywhere. They're way out there.
How does it make you feel?
Pardon?
How does that make you feel to be there when they were built? And
Well,
see
I
them
feel like an old guy, man. I've seen everything. Our anatomy professor was the greatest guy in the world, but he liked softball, so we had to have softball tournaments between ourselves. We had a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun as students. I want to tell you, we had a lot of fun.
So which were you? Were you a veterinarian? Were you a GP? What?
Yeah, no, the only thing I didn't remember now, I went directly from veterinary school to University of Houston when I was really busy to medical school. Like, there was never, and we were going in those days originally, see, during the war, they shifted schools and you went all the time. There were no summer vacations. There were 3 trimesters a year. So you could finish college in 2 years and 8 months, and you could finish medical school in 2 years and 8 months. And I do have one very bright cousin I have to tell you about. He graduated Baylor. He went to Rice. Then he went to Baylor. And when he graduated, he couldn't get a license because he was only 20 years old. So they did let him go into training, even though he didn't have a license. So he did okay. He's a very, very, very bright guy, though.
You come from good stock.
Well, you know, and then, you know, I like to tell this boy the story. He grew up very prominent, very good physician, and he told my brother that his mother browbeat him so damn much was the only reason he went to medical school, and that's not what he wanted to do. So when he got up in age a little bit and had done very well, they moved to some small farm up north of Houston somewhere, and she crocheted and he had a garden and all this, and that's where they finished their life out up there. They had about 5, they did produce 5 children though, which I thought was great. Both of them were pretty smart people. But he said his mother browbeat him, that's all he knew.
So, has Simonton changed very much from when you were a boy?
Gosh, yeah. Well, you know, it's the times that have changed. You know, they lost the train. They didn't have the need for 2 stores anymore, 2 grocery stores. And there was not, it was slowly changing, and a place where people bought lands just to have a little place out in the country. They didn't do that when I was young. It was different, it was business. So yeah, it was slowly changing. And it seemed different. It wasn't as busy in the middle of town like it used to be.
I always ask this of people that I interview. During your time, can you tell me what race relations were like?
Well, remember that here, I probably don't have the figures right, but I would say it was 10 or 20% white, 40 or 50% black, and the rest was Latin. Not many Latin people, particularly Mexicans. We had a couple farmers that I can remember a couple names. Now I was raised by all black people. My mother worked, so I didn't know the difference. You know, I grew up with an all black, a black nanny, a black cook, the man who ran our farm, the people who came to work were all black, and a black playmate. So,
These are just kids you played with.
yeah,
No big deal.
didn't make a difference to me. I mean, I had a black playmate. I didn't have to run away from him. There were people around, and these people had children. We all played. I didn't, and they were not, you know, there were never an overpopulation of whites here. Now, they didn't go to school with us. That seemed always strange to me. See, I went to school here till high school. I went to junior up to till I went to, And my high school was Rosenberg, which is separated from high school. We didn't have consolidated. So I went to school at a separate high school in Rosenberg. 16 miles each way on a bus every day. And I went there for the first 3 years of high school. And the last year, my father decided that seniors didn't seem to him to want to work hard enough in school. And so he got enough money together and sent my brother and I, which was behind me, to Schreiner Institute in Kerrville. And I spent 1 year, that's a military school, and I graduated from there as a senior. And of course it was a pretty tough school. And so I was well prepared to go to college. The first year I thought was really a breeze, and after that I didn't think it was any more breeze in college. But you have to work like everybody else. We studied some of the same stuff the last year in high school at Schreiner that I had when I went to college.
So sounds like your father pushed you a little bit.
Well, yeah, you start having to work. Plus the fact that I never forgot that in those days they were much more liberal about letting people, the numbers were not so important. And we had the killer class turned out to be chemistry. And that was the biggest class I had as a freshman, was chemistry. And then after Christmas, about 40% of those people didn't show up.
Couldn't do it. Oh, went to
They got their walking papers.
That was the same way it was for us, organic chemistry.
Yeah.
Cut out.
About 40% got their walking. So when you look around, damn, where's it? They weren't around anymore. And of course, veterinary school, we didn't have that many students in those days either. I've sort of forgotten, but it didn't seem I had very big classes compared to, today. Of course, it's too small today. We're just talking about that. They need to increase the demand is far beyond what the output of veterinarians is. Because you reckon any of them go out and do food service work like we're sort of trained?
Oh yeah,
See, we're trained to be food service inspectors. In fact, veterinarians in the military were usually food inspectors. And one summer in medical school, I became the base veterinarian at Ellington Field, which was operational, but not real big. And it was not a very big base, but I went out and got the summer job as base veterinarian out there.
Now, were you in the military at all? Ever?
No, later on, this is a fact you probably don't know. The only draft in the Korean War was physicians. Are you aware of this? The only draft of people in the Korean War were physicians. And there wasn't any big complaint. I don't know. The doctors themselves probably bitched. But you see, particularly in the Air Force, they called all these people back who'd been in World War II. They bitched about it, but they called them back. And so when I went to intern, that's the first year of training after medical school, at the old City County Hospital, which was on Wall Drive, which had been torn down, they paid us room, board, and I was single, so I lived on the top floor of the hospital, uniforms and $25 a month. So I said, this is crazy, because they're gonna draft me. And so I joined the Air Force, and I was stationed out of Ellington Field, which I probably went to twice in my life, and or go out there for some paperwork. And they made me a second lieutenant, and so I could buy me a new car. I thought it was a real deal. But when I finished that year, I had to go and give military a little of my time. A couple of years I spent in Okinawa. Well, I thought I was going to Korea, because everybody said you go to Korea if you're a doctor, except they sent me to flight surgeon school. I was in the Air Force, and then I got to Tokyo, and you're going to go here, and you're going to go there, and you're going to go there. And they said, by the way, we just got a fax or something that we need to send a doctor to Okinawa because the guy there is going home. His time's up. I said, you're going to Okinawa? Okinawa? I never heard of that. Where's that? Well, you'll know. I landed there the day. They couldn't take me there for a couple of days because it was a typhoon. You know, we have typhoons over there. And when I got there, that was really something. It was right after the typhoon. Boy, it blew everything flat. Except the military, you know, the way the U.S. got Okinawa was, it was supposed to be, they could only build typhoon-proof buildings. So all the buildings, the military buildings, were, a lot of them were concrete. And we stayed in little houses that had big cables and cabled them to the ground, so they didn't blow away. I had a couple good years there.
Now, did you ever marry?
Yeah, finally married when I came home and was starting my residency and have a child. She's up in Denver. But I trained in Houston and practiced and stayed around there ever since then.
I understand that recently you made a donation of some property to the county.
Yeah, you know, in my old age, you know, you think about things like that. So I donated 68 acres that goes from Saunders Road to the river. And I had this in my mind for a long time, and so I talked to the state, and the state of Texas told me that they could accept my gift, but they didn't have any money for development right now. So I thought, well, during my lifetime, I'd really like to see it develop. And so I sort of talked about the county, and I told CJ about it, and she talked to our county commissioner, and he thought it was a great idea, I don't know about now, and that they had $5 million for development. He didn't tell me where the money came from, and he said, we got $5 million, and so we took him down to see the land. Gary went, we got a couple golf carts, it was sort of wet, took him all over, and he was so excited. He said he couldn't find, if he had to find an area for a park, he couldn't find a better one because it's got a lot of good features. And a lot of it, one part is that it's built up, about 20 acres of that has been built up in the past 70 some odd years, and it's down lower level, and that part is like a garden down in there. It's trees, gigantic trees, bushes, animals, plants. And so he thought this was really something. He couldn't pick it. If I gave it to him, they would hire a park architect and all this stuff. And he's very partial to the Boy Scouts, and he was going to build some lakes for them and all this, and a baseball field. So I gave it to him in April the 5th of this year. Yeah, April the 5th of this year. I gave it to him, and you know, you put all these can and can't do, but I was telling them not long ago that when I looked at the list that they already had, the park rules, both if you take the state and the county, they're pretty darn good rules. I mean, it's for everybody. It's not for anybody, and particularly it's for everybody. And we hope they're going to get off their ass and do something. Nothing's been done yet. But I've given them the land, and when they asked me recently to come and talk to them about something else, I told them that they're talking to the wrong person. The county owns the land now. I don't own the land. If they don't build a park, they have to give land back to me in my air. So,
What kind of park, what features would you like to see in a park down there?
well, I think it's ideal for a place. I don't want people to stay in there for a week or two. I want it to be an open area, but it's a beautiful place for picnics, maybe riding your horse, and then that part next to the river. Gardens, plants, birds, animals. I can see walkways in little elevated places where people can go through there, and there's everything you imagine. It is a park. You don't have to build a damn thing back there. It's already done for them. God did it for them. It's, you know, and when the river gets up high, they have to build it so that you don't put permanent buildings or anything there. But the other part did not flood at all in our last flood, so that says a lot for you. The front part is regular level out there, and this other part, you go along and it just goes whoop, way down there. And then you go further and it goes a little bit more and it goes all the way down to the river. So it's all filled with trees and plants and animals. And we really didn't, we had it pasture, we always worried about our cows going down there if they don't go to the river and get stuck in the mud or something like that. But it's, they just have to develop it. It's the park part, and that part is done. And the other parts, you know, I've had many, when I was a resident, God, the nurses and the doctors, that was hot stuff for us to go out there and have a picnic, and ride horses, walk around, smell the clean air. It's a pretty nice place.
Will they name it after you?
I'm sorry.
Will they name it after you?
Well, I asked them to name it after my mother and father. You know, that's the least I can do. Wasn't with them, I wouldn't be here. Wouldn't have a park, yeah. But I still have some land. I got some land backs up into Western Lakes. I got some, you know, some good land. Just happened to be, my land is all over. It's Bowser Road, Saunders Road, Guyler Road, it's sort of everywhere. The Guyler Road had about 2 foot of water on it. But we only have hay, so you know, didn't destroy anything.
One thing our area lacks is baseball fields. I'm always looking for
Baseball fields. Man, you know, here you got a place that up in the front, you see it's just regular land, but it's got little areas of drainage, so it's got charisma. It's got charisma, and you have to go see it. I thought when the commissioner, he was just excited, he couldn't stand it. We rode down in golf carts. Now, he did not get to go in the park that day because it was a little wet that day, but the park next to the river, Gary and I like to go because he's an animal person. He knows the kind of birds and all that. You know, that kind of hawk and all that. Well, it's filled with that. You don't have to do anything. All you do is clean it up and make a place where people can see it.
That's going to be very important for these school kids that are growing up in subdivisions.
Yeah.
Your donation, or whatever you call that, to
Yeah.
the county is going to be, it will endure, and it will affect a
If
lot.
they get off their ass and do something.
They will.
Huh? We hope.
They're on government time. Dr.
Well,
Daly,
I feel like, you know, they make a lot of promises, and you know, I just felt like I wanted to get it done while I was still living, and therefore I didn't want to give it to the state, who was very honest about it. They said, we just don't have the money. We're sort of short now, and maybe the people in the county, you know, we don't care where the people come from. They'll come from Houston. They'll come from every place if it's good enough. And the only other park he told me they had was that one that's in the dam down there. And he said, that's highly restricted because you still have the federal laws that control everything. So I thought, well, boy, if we have a park like this, they'll enjoy this like I did when I was 35 years old. Man, it's ideal. I can see you having, you know, anything that's reasonable you can have there. And the rules are such, it's got to be orderly and all that. I thought, boy, this is just great. Not much has been done yet. I'll give them a little bit more time, but it's, well, a few months here, not much has been done. It's got a lot of trees, a lot of pecan trees in it. It's got oak trees in it. You wouldn't want to, you don't have to add anything to it. Just take out the brush and stuff.
Can I ask you just a few more questions? I don't
Yeah.
don't overstay my welcome. Did you know anybody in Fulshear growing up?
No, the only people that I just knew of them. I was not really overly friendly with anybody. And of course, I left, you know, to go to school, and I never really came back except to visit my parents. And the people that, you know, I knew the Doziers, because the Doziers are famous barbecue place, and I knew a few more people, but we didn't go to the same school. See, they went to Richmond, I went to Rosenberg. And we knew the Mays very well, but that's because we used part of the land next to us, and now belonged to Mr. Mays, and my daddy was his buddy, so we just added that all in with our pasture, and we used it for the lifetime my father has been sold to Twinwood by the estate now, and his mother knew, his wife knew my mother, so they were very friendly, but we hung around in Simonton. We had a lot to do there.
So
You know what I went to Fulcher for? Two things. I had sinusitis, and I had to always be treated. And the one thing that I could do was swim in the water at the rice farms where they have and that was all rice country. See? So we went over there to go swim in, and sometimes the water's so damn cold. It's about 55 degrees comes out of the ground. But we'd go over there and knew some of the people and swim. And I could swim over there. And I either had to go there or Galveston. I couldn't go in any fresher. I've never swam in the Brazos River. It was called a dangerous river when I grew up, and I didn't go in there. It had all swirl pools. But I could go to Fulcher and the watermelons. Man, I ate a watermelon every single day when I was growing up. You could have a hole if you wanted to. Break it, eat the heart, and throw the rest away. So we really love watermelons. They came from all over, but Fulcher was so close.
If you hadn't have gone into medicine, what would you have done?
Engineer, right?
I'd probably been something related to farm work or farm instruments or equipment or something. I became an obstetrician and gynecologist because young physicians are sometimes the people they're associated and work with in the hospital. You just sort of admire somebody and you end up. That's what it was about OB-GYN. I really thought about, my uncle could not understand why I didn't become an ear, nose, and throat doctor. I told him that penicillin was going to cure everything and we wouldn't have any more. Well, that turns out not to be true. And then I wanted to be an orthopedist because you work with hands. But the guy who was in charge of the resident at our hospital was such a son of a bitch. I spent that 1 month in orthopedics. And I had to make rounds where he mistreated patients, doctors, and everything. I was just an intern, so he didn't bother me. I had to do all the scut work. And that turned me off, but I really should have been an orthopedist. I would have just loved that.
He was one of the original, he owned Sharpstown Hospital. He was one of the owners.
Yeah.
Of
Really?
Sharpstown Hospital.
Well,
It was a private hospital.
Frank Sharp developed Sharpstown. And he was rich, and he had a lot to do with our legislator. And one of the family practice groups, one of the doctors, was a friend of Frank Sharp. And so he decided that the one thing missing about Sharpstown was a local hospital. There were not any local hospitals those days when we started out. Finally, Memorial built out and built one out there, and then Frank Sharp practically gave us 2 acres of land to build a hospital, and we built it. We got people from the medical center want to make it different. No foolishness. Want to make it very fine. So we got bone specialists, surgeon, urologist, internist, and of course, I then was in the same group where the fellow was, Roy Olson, that knew Frank Sharp, and so we got a good group of people, and we had a good reputation. And then finally, there came a day after a number of years that the hospital chain started, and they were tough to compete with, and so we just sold out to them. And I was very happy because I didn't have any money when they were getting up the money for the hospital, and my mother loaned me $10,000. So I could give her back her $10,000 in a new pink Oldsmobile. I'm not sure that's the color she wanted, but she said, "Thank you, son," anyway. But I thought I was pretty rich after they gave me that money.
Not very many people get to say I used to own a hospital.
Yeah, well, the group owned the hospital.
You know,
Yeah,
it's-
you're part of it.
And it really was nice to have that money, and after you work a long time, and you get by, but you're not. And suddenly you get a big wad. That's pretty good.
so you were an OB-GYN.
I was OB-GYN. I delivered a baby. The last baby was 20 years
But I
ago.
was going to ask, how many babies did you deliver?
Oh gosh, you don't know. I just delivered. In my day, when we were really going, we really worked hard, and we weren't worried about how many hours and all this stuff. People, so we just delivered a lot. And it's sort of funny now that people will occasionally come up and see me. Women will come up and see me and say, "Hey, do you remember when you delivered my son 42 years ago?" God's sakes, no. Plus the fact you slip a little bit when you get a little older. But I haven't delivered a baby in at least 20 years. And so all I do now is I work a couple half a days, and mainly I assist with surgery. That's where I was this morning with one of the senior guys, because once you become good at anything, well, he doesn't want to operate without me anymore. He's from Belleville. He's as country as I am. Gene Hebner. And
So you still practice?
yeah, I still go to the hospital, and I help at a charity clinic. I got a head charity. We've been running a charity clinic 30 years, I'll bet you. And we got a lady who runs it. And do it for free. God, I don't want to pay for them because they have trouble getting by as it is. Our governor is, I think I could say it, have screwed that whole thing up though. But they wanted to punish Planned Parenthood, and we don't have anything to do with abortions. But they killed off about 60% of the clinics in Texas that were for women's care, family planning. It has nothing to do with abortions. And they killed it. And God, it's a struggle to keep the clinic we have now open, to find enough funds to keep it open. And the patients are just a SOL in Texas. But I still work.
So what do you credit your longevity to?
I think genetics. I don't know anything else. I don't know how you get, how you get to be 91. You're still running around. I don't know.
You look pretty good for 91. Don't look a day over 80.
Yeah. Well,
Shoot, he can-
I tell you what.
he
Most
can
places I
run
go,
around.
I went to a party where a nurse that worked for me a number of years had a big party, and they're all, she and her husband are 70 or so. And I guarantee you, there were a lot of older people, but there was nobody who was older than I was.
And he was as energetic,
Yeah.
or as energetic as him.
No. Sometimes I have trouble staying up with Gary. He walks pretty damn fast.
I can keep up with it.
And he always fools me. He says, "Let's stop here and have a little walk." So, life's been good. I traveled more lately than I did before. I didn't have money before.
How many times have you been around the world?
No, I only went. One day I woke up and said, I think I ought to go around the world. Everybody ought to go around the
Why
world.
don't you have you? And you
No,
have.
he did. He did.
So there's a special, most airlines have a special price and an office that you call separately, and so I flew United, was Continental before, and I just decided.
He goes and helps too with, what's the deal with Guatemala?
Yeah, we go to Guatemala. I still go to Guatemala with
In
a
practice.
church group that my partner is the head of our group, but it's all worked out so great. We go a week every year. Now he goes 2 weeks. I told him I'll go 1 week still. We go into Antigua, Guatemala. We get there on a Saturday. On Sunday, we see the patients that have previously been seen by physicians that belong to the little hospital and other groups, and see them for surgery. And on Monday, we start operating. We operate till Friday, and on Saturday, we go home. It's so well greased and organized that you can do so much. You just can't believe we can do that. But we've been going there. This is my 16th, 17th year. I don't know. He's gone 21 or 22. And they have other people coming from other places besides Houston, And they got people come from Italy, Spain, and Canada to mesh in all together. And last year, out of 52 weeks, they had surgeons there of different varieties, 41 weeks. So, yeah, and now I've gotten used to going there. It's a pretty nifty, touristy town, and work, what the hell. We can do that.
Great excuse to take a trip.
Pardon?
It's a great excuse to take a trip.
Yeah, it's a great excuse. And,
But they pay their own way.
we have to pay your own way.
Yeah, close to us.
And then
Yeah,
they raise money for the nurses. See, we take our own nurses, or the basic health they've trained the locals to do. But for our nursing and everything, we take all that with us, and they raise the money for them. We pay our own way, and they got a great facility. We need like a motel with a 10-foot wall, and it's pretty neat place. And we're essentially got the whole place. But we take about 45 people, something like that. And 45 can do the 4 operating rooms, and we take all the specialists. And other groups take different specialties. We take surgeons because, man, there are so many hernias and gallbladders to do, it's unbelievable. But there are other things too. OB-GYN, when we're doing gynecology only, no obstetrics. We have an ear, nose, and throat guy who's been, same guy wants to go with us. He's just so busy, it's unbelievable. We take a plastic surgeon with our group because there's so many cleft palates and lips, and these people out in the boonies are poor. They don't have any medical care, and they got a 2-bed hospital in Antigua. But when the money runs out, they just close it up, and there's no play. If you don't have any money down the street, nobody gives a damn. It's the damnedest thing I've ever seen. But that's where some of those countries are, so they can come to this clinic. And the other thing is, it's not just in Antigua. Some of our groups like to go out, particularly the family practitioners, and so they send them out every day. Usually they don't spend the night. If they spend the night, they stay in the church or someplace like that. And they go out and see patients out there. Plus the fact that we have a big clinic in Antigua, and people come in what I call chicken buses. You know what I mean?
I can imagine.
So we've always been busy. We've never had any trouble with not having enough patients.
So tell me, I got to change the subject. How did you meet these guys?
Well,
We first we bought the land from him, and that clinic, we made that clinic out of his old house. So
they got the house in 9 acres because my sister inherited the house, and she was ill, and I thought, well, we have no use for it. Let's sell it off, and they bought it, and they've restored it essentially like everything was before. The big barn is there, the little house in the back my brother stayed in. This house is essentially the floors, the windows, everything's like it was before. So when I come home, it's like sort of home again. So it's been successful to them, and it's a place to come just feel like I'm home. Particularly back in the back. I'm a tractor man. I now own 2 tractors and leave with them. Old tractors. I'm into old cars too. I was many years.
He helped build that Quonset barn back there in 1939.
I got to work on that all summer.
He was 13, right?
In 1939, it's 14.
14. And he wrecked his mother's car. She made him work on that thing.
I sort of
And I
was going.
said, yeah, here's your initials. He's got carved in the concrete.
I sort of was going a little fast at 14 in my mother's car and hit one of those bridges pretty near Fulcher. Enough to skin it up. It didn't stop the car, but it did sort of leave a mess. So that was
There's your punishment.
I got to work for the summer with Mr. Laberta. It was a well-known carpenter from Wallace, and his name was Mr. Laberta. And then he had a great big guy, was his first assistant, and I was the guy that got to do all the rest of the jobs. We built that over the summer.
Where did y'all have your office for your lumberyard?
No, my dad just did it down out of the store.
So they would go to the store and then
Yeah, and then they
come
would
get
go
the
here.
supplies
Yeah,
here?
yeah, and then they would go out there.
So this has been a lumber yard.
You know, we've had a good time.
We did-
I gotta say, he's probably the best friend I ever had.
So we got something in common. We got a hell of a lot in
Got
common.
veterinary degrees.
Got a veterinary. I worked two summers in medical school. One summer I worked for a guy. Well, I worked during the year too for a guy named Dr. Cook on Wayside, in his veterinary hospital. And I told him if he didn't make care of me take care of cats, which I didn't particularly like. I'd do anything else he wanted. So I was his dog man. Then one year, I got to work at Ellington Field as food inspector. To make, I got to make a little money sometime. One year, I never forgot, I went by myself, I don't know why the hell I did that, to Cuba. And I never forgot that trip to Cuba. I stayed in Hotel Nacional de Cuba. Boy, was that a high-class place. That was those people from the U.S. Mafia was running that. They had the best outdoor show with show women directly from New York at night you've ever seen in your life. Went to the distillery and they got me drunk on the liquor there.
I never heard this one.
Oh, hey, look, they would give you a free sample of anything you wanted that they made. They made all these different kinds of rum and liqueurs. Man, I'm telling you, suddenly I was so dizzy, I didn't know what the hell I was going to get back to the hotel. They sold me, you could bring back like 2 or 3 fifths to the States was legal, and whatever the legal limit they sold everyone of us, put us back on that bus and sent us back to town. But I don't remember, I guess I just fiddled around the city and looked around and drank and went to the shows. But the Mafia ran it, it was really nice, I want to tell you, for tourists, and relatively inexpensive. So I did want to go to Cuba. I talked to a bunch of Cubans I know, doctors. See, we always talk about going, but we've never gone because, well, now they let you go and see that hotel, which I think is really run down now. Didn't have any screens on the windows. I said, why don't you have any screens on the windows? He said, because we don't have mosquitoes. So that's all. I didn't remember. I don't think that was in. I started there in, I graduated 46 or so, about 1948. It's a long time ago.
You got good memories of it, though. Thank you
Yeah.
for sharing all that you
Yeah.
know.
Well, a lot of it I've forgotten. I've forgotten a lot more than I remember.